Welcome to the Playground Talks podcast, a podcast for busy parents who want to own their parenting style and develop a stronger sense of how to handle challenging situations. I am Tamia Friat, your host and a mother of three. In this podcast, I will interview psychologists, practitioners, behavioral therapists, teachers, and other experts about topics that bother all of us as parents so you can get both the parenting principles and practical aspects that resonate with you, give you confidence and joy. Hey, so on today's show we have Mayra Azanza and Hagit Segal, the co-founders of the Mistake Club. We talked on how perfection affects adults and kids, what could be an alternative approach for perfection, and since they both have a rich career background, we also discussed how they balance work and family life. To me, both Mayra and Hagit are great role models in their career and personal life because they're not only speaking about Mistake Club philosophy, but they're actually living by it. So just before we dive in, take a look at the cover art of this episode so you can see the Mistake Club doll. And now we are ready to dive in and hear how and why this doll was initially created.
Hi.
Hey.
How are you today?
We're doing great.
Great, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Would like to start with you, Mayra. I read that the initial idea started when your daughter actually had this hesitating about how she needs to approach her own mistakes. So I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that.
Well, of course. And actually, it was Hagit who opened my eyes and told me that, that's how my daughter is. She is a perfectionist. That's who she is. And I shouldn't try to change that. What we should do and everybody should do with their kids is just to understand them, embrace who they are and help them. Because she struggles. I think pretty much everybody struggles with that little voice that tells you that what you're doing is not good enough. So what happened is I saw her, she came back from school and she was sitting at the table and she was drawing. She's always been so artistic. She likes to draw, but she was really frustrated because she was making this drawing and it wasn't going the way she wanted it to be. So she raised really furious and angry. And I came up to her and I asked her, what's going on? Why are you so frustrated? And she said, oh, nothing, Mom. It's just a silly mistake. And I could see this little character that you see there, hiding behind that door, so sad that she wasn't understanding the opportunity that it was presented to her to understand the mistake and embrace it and love it because it is imperfect and it's showing you something else. So with that experience of creating dolls and creating characters, I went to my sewing machine and make the first mistake doll for her. And I left it at her door with a note telling her, making mistakes means that you're trying to do something new. And then she took it to school and it became a thing. And then I met Hagit and here we are.
That's amazing. So I want to ask Hagit because she has a background of MBA and she worked as a graphic designer for over a decade. And I'm wondering what makes you to focus now on inspiring kids.
So before I got my MBA and my graphic design, which started as a hobby and turned into a business, but my bachelor's degree is in early childhood education. And I'm the oldest sister of 6 siblings. So I've always been, the educator kind of personality. And when I met Mayra in Palo Alto. It was, I think, Female Entrepreneurs event or something like that. And everyone came from tech background. And Mayra was walking around with this beautiful doll. And I approached her right away and asked her, what is this? And she told me the story. I was literally in tears. And then I remember asking her, great, so what do you do? What's your company? And she said, nothing. I make them and I sell them. They're handmade. I'm an artist. And I said, no, this cannot be just a doll. There is no way. There is so much to tell the world about what you're doing, and you have to get the word out. And, coming from my education background, I started kind of shooting ideas. And I remember Mayra looking at me and said, oh, That's really interesting. And then we decided to meet for coffee a few times and we became partners in crime. And we've been having a blast together in the last 2.5 years. And we've been working and developing Mistake and additional, not just the doll, we have a bunch more products. The one thing I can tell you about my personal connection to this project, I was thinking about it actually today, that if Mayra would have approached me before I was a mom, I don't think that I would do this project, because I have been such a perfectionist my whole life, which is why, I felt for Myra's daughter when she told me the story. But to me, motherhood, and this is a parents podcast, so I think a lot of parents would relate. To me, that was the biggest crisis of my life as a perfectionist. For the first time in my life, I couldn't excel. And the mother that I thought I would be, the fairy tale mother that all the stories and the social media told me that I should be, and the mother that I actually was, two completely different things. Experiencing the sense of failure on a regular basis. And it doesn't matter what everyone else tells you, it's how you feel inside. And also, I felt that I was the only one who didn't have it together. It felt like everyone else is so perfect. They know how to do things. And I had so many questions every day and so many regrets every day. So that's why when Myra told me when she showed me Mistake, I thought, no, people need to share their imperfections. They need to share their struggles. They need to share the hardships, the failures, so that we know that we are not alone, because we are not alone in this struggle. So to me, Mistake is really a therapeutic. It's the passion of my life since I met Myra, but it's also a therapeutic project for me.
Well, that's being so honest, saying what you just mentioned about the gap between what you wish to be and the actual mom that you are. And I really appreciate what you just said. And I think it's so important to speak it up and, say it out loud. We as a parent, we need to adjust the ideal parents we want to be and not to look around, because everyone has different personality and their kids are also different. I want to ask Mayra, you were an entrepreneur for almost 2 decades, meaning that you had to take the courage and to dare and to try and to learn. So even before making the doll, I realized you actually lived your life by the mistakes philosophy. And I was wondering, where did you get it from? Were you raised like that? Were you aware of, that philosophy?
No. I grew up in Mexico, and I hope my parents don't get really upset with what I'm gonna say, but I was raised in Mexico. In Mexico, when you're a woman, especially for my generation, there is very little expectation from you. Like, there is nothing expected from you. You're supposed to just get married and have kids. That's the goal. That's all you have to do. So like half of my brain kind of got that message, but the other half, or I will say like 80% of the rest of my brain didn't get the message. So I kept trying and trying new things and like being an entrepreneur since I was a kid, regardless. So I never thought that was what I was doing was really revolutionary until I got the reaction from society, like, what are you doing? Then I would be like, okay, so maybe what I'm doing is not necessarily right. That is actually very interesting, because contrary to what Hagit experienced as a child, that she was such a perfectionist and she strived to be perfect, I grew up failing so much that failure was the thing that was expected from me. And I didn't understand that the importance of that. And I didn't understand, like, there was like this kind of, how to say that, like miscommunication between the expectations and what I was doing. So I kept trying new things and being an entrepreneur and trying and failing and being criticized very harshly. At the same time, I couldn't stop. There was like a part of me, and I still can't. I I just can't stop trying new things. It's just who I am. It's not that I was raised like that. It's just who I am. So it wasn't until I embraced that about myself that, okay, this is who I am. I like trying crazy things, and people around me will judge me, and I have to be okay with that. Otherwise, I'm just going to be very unhappy. So that's one of the great things that I've learned through Mistake, and actually working with Hagit, who's always been such a good advisor, telling me, no, it's okay to try, it's okay to fail, and it's okay that it's not perfect, and it's okay that you're still doing it. Because I think the important thing, after all, for kids and for parents is to have the people around you that gives you the right message, that really embrace you and really encourage you to keep being yourself. So yeah, I was definitely not raised like that. It's just me and my just my nature.
Well, you were true to yourself early on in your life. That's amazing. I admire that because it seems like even if you were failing and even if you heard criticizing around you, you would just keep on going and you were unstoppable. So that's a great resilience. And I also hear from you that as a parent, you can role model how to support those failures and to embrace them other than criticize and being judgmental. Hagit, I want to ask you just the same question because you also had so many different areas like financial, and I am wondering what inspired you and if you were actually aware of the perfectionism versus I'm trying and learning.
Yeah, so my career has been very versatile as far as the types of things I've done and also the places where I've been. I lived overseas, and I remember even when I had my graphic and web design business and it was very successful financially. I remember walking with my husband and telling him how I felt ungrateful and selfish because here I have this amazing business, but I don't feel fulfilled. I kept looking for meaning. I needed the meaning in my life. It was missing. And I felt, yes, I made a nice website for someone, great. But I needed something more, something beyond that. And to me, when I met Myra, it was all the light bulbs just were lit and I found my place. And, it's hard as an entrepreneur. You have very difficult moments and, we have our plans and things that we want done. And being an entrepreneur is not a stable ground. But still, I have the energy and the will and the power, and everything keeps pushing me forward because I believe in it so much. I feel for the first time in my life that I'm doing something that can actually help people and literally save lives. Because we know, Myra lives in Palo Alto, and we know that I think that's one of the places where it's the highest percentage of youth committing suicide. So when we say that we are here to save lives, we mean it. And to me, I wake up for this in the morning. I go to sleep with this at night. And, I mentioned earlier my struggles as a mom, not being the perfect mom I wanted to be. My daughter is 4.5 years old, and mistake allows me to be kind to myself. I mess up 50 times a day and I overreact, maybe I give in when I should not, maybe I don't take advantage of a learning opportunity. But at the end of the day, I tell myself this was today, tomorrow is a new day, and just to be kind and forgive myself for not being perfect. So I feel like this is a service to me as it is to all the kids and parents in the world. And speaking of meaning, it's very important to us. Myra and I talked about this very early on, how it's important for us to help the parents at least as much as the kids, because that's where it starts. We want the parents to be kind to themselves so that they're able to be kind to their kids. And we want them to be able to embrace their own failures so that they can support their kids when they fail and that they don't try to push them and say, oh, why did you get A minus? Why is it not A plus? And to understand, just to have a better perspective and understand our actions as parents, how they affect our children.
So I hear again how important is for us, the parent, to role model when we treat ourselves when we fail and to admit it in front of the kids. Oh, today this dish didn't go the way I wanted, but that's okay. But you know what? I want you to give some example and how do you use your amazing doll. So let's take an example that my daughter came back from school with some art she did and it wasn't even finished. And I asked her about that and she just looked at me and says, that's nothing. And she threw it to the garbage. So how would you use the doll? And also what are the age that you think is appropriate to use the doll?
Well, actually, there's two different experiences that I have with my daughter and then with my son. With my daughter, because she's so artistic and also so perfectionist, when I first created Mistake, is I just sat with her and I brought Mistake in front of her and I showed her, it's all uneven, it's all mismatched and like different textures and colors. And that's just who Mistake is. And it helped her that way. She still struggles a little bit because that's who she is, but she is more understanding on the importance of making mistakes and what to learn from them. Now, with my 7-year-old son, he has witnessed all this from the side. So when things don't go perfectly for him, he already knows. He's like, okay, it's a mistake. And sometimes this is something funny. In Christmas, we wanted to make this very sophisticated kind of jello that we in Mexican culture we have is like colorful and it's kind of tricky. And he did everything. He loves helping me in the kitchen. He did everything the way it should be. But then I ruined it. Like I poured the jello, it was very hot, everything melted, and it was a complete disaster. And he was like, oh. And then he looked at me and he said, but that's okay, right? Next time you won't pour it when it's so hot, right, Mom? And I was like, oh, yes, thank you. Thank you for reminding me that it's okay. It's just a jello. It's not the end of the world. But he was kind of heartbroken a little bit because it wasn't his fault that things didn't go the right way. But then he was so mature that he was able to show me through my own philosophy, like, okay, it's okay. It's just a jello. So I think the doll is like a physical reminder that we are imperfect, which I think everybody needs. Humans, we're all very visual, very sensory. Everything that gets into our senses gets embedded in our brains. And then the message. And then you complete it with the message, with the magazines and the articles and the interviews that we make. And I think Hagit can talk about it because she is the one in charge of all the content. So she can tell us about that.
Yeah, before that, I wanted to mention that you asked earlier about the age range. So we defined as a company that the kids that we're approaching, we have 3 different types of audience. We have the children, which we defined as ages 3 to 10, parents and teachers, because we have different products and materials that are relevant to each one of those audiences. What we didn't expect, and it's really nice to see, is that we've had multiple older people ordering Mistake for themselves. We had a 60-year-old woman, a 50-year-old woman who ordered it. And I always like to send a personal note and ask who this is for. And it was for themselves. It just shows how all of us need it. We all need a reminder of how mistakes and failure is actually so important to all of us. And like Mayra said, mistake is just one reminder. It's the visual reminder, right? We have 4 fingers and then we have 3 fingers and the legs are not the same. So this is the visual, cute, adorable reminder that shows you that you can be absolutely beautiful and adorable, even though you're not perfect. But we also have our monthly, bi-monthly now magazine that we create for parents and teachers. So it's not for the kids, but every month we create unique, original content. And Mayra didn't tell you, but she's a very, very gifted writer. And she writes every month, depending on our topic, she writes an original children's story about that topic. And it's always so thoughtful and it teaches you and it's so creative. And there are all these characters and lessons in the story. And then I take her stories and I create the lesson plans for the teachers. And we interview experts who bring different perspectives into the topics. And we have guest bloggers who write on the topics. So we try to provide parents with information, recommendations about books, movies, family activities, quotes, anything that's related to the topic so that parents have the tools to bring this to themselves first and then to the kids. So this is what we're trying to do. And Mayra has developed many products since, and we will be launching them hopefully this summer. And they are nothing short of genius. I can't wait for the world to see them, and we'll let you know when it's ready so you can also see for yourself. But the purpose of everything we do, there is always the one thought, is empowering the parents so that they can empower their kids. And the word empowering is such a cliche, but at the end of the day, it's really about self-love. That's what it is for us.
I resonate a lot with empower yourself and treat yourself with compassion. And then you can do just the same to your kids. And it seems like the amazing doll you created really helps to remind the kids and the parents. And in addition, what I realized is that when you use this doll, you might also have a different approach other than lecturing your kid about it's okay to have mistakes. You actually ask and you show the actual mistakes doll, and then you can sort of coach them and ask what do they think when they're making mistakes. So it's also the way to encourage the people to teach and understand your own kids. So I find it helpful in so much levels that it's just amazing. And I want to hear from you. How can our listeners get to your product, to your services?
In our website, you can subscribe to our Mistake of the Month magazine. I think that's the easiest way. Just go into the website and just leave your email address. Follow us in social media. We're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook and TikTok and Twitter too. So you find us there and you will see a lot of different content. One of the things that I would like to add is I have a sweet spot for teenagers and how they are in this gray area. So although our content is focused on the early part of life where we really get the negative connotation from mistakes, that's where the root of the problem, because I see it in my daughter that we need a reminder in teenage years. So the content that we put in TikTok, it's also intended to reach out in a kind of soft and direct way to that population and send them the message. I know TikTok is full of dances and silly things, but every once in a while you can find a good message. So we want to put it there for anyone to see it. And if it's just one person that gets the message and that person feels better about themselves, because of that, my life is complete. So that's basically the main ways to find us.
So for people who want to buy products, and again, the store is going to be updated soon with new products, we chose to sell only through our website. So if you go to our website, you have the shop page, and then you can get the doll there. And we have a book that Mayra wrote, which also has a free animation on our YouTube channel. And you can email us, and if you have, questions or ideas, we are very tuned to parents and we want to hear from them, because everything we do is for parents and their kids and educators as well, because they have access to our children many hours of the day and all the ways that Mayra mentioned.
And we have also everything written on the show notes. So if someone didn't really pick it, don't worry, just look at the show notes. You mentioned being a career person and a mom. So I want to ask you something that I think we all struggle with is how do you balance between career and being a mom?
So actually, the person I need to thank for it is Mayra, because when we started first of all, I was with my daughter at home for almost 2 years after she was born. It was important for me to be with her. And when she finally went to school, it was my time to find my path and what I'm doing. And very quickly after that, I met Mayra. So really, mistake came as a natural thing for me. And I remember at first I would be so stressed out and work like literally through the night. And, this is schedule, and those are things that we decide what to do and how fast we're going to go. And very, very early on, and I'm grateful for that. Very early on, we had COVID right after we started, and Myra was the one who told me from her experience as an entrepreneur. She said, we're not going to drain our energy to the point that this become something bad for us. So she really balanced me well. And if I couldn't work because my daughter was sick, or even if sometimes you just need a break, and we are very open about how we feel and our energy levels and where we are. And I remember one of the things Myra said to me very, very early on was, we're going to make it happen. So you don't need to work through the night, because if it's not going to happen in a year, it's going to happen in two, but it's going to happen. So she allowed me, the perfectionist, to take off the pressure of everything has to happen. It has to happen really well, and it has to happen now. And I think it's a really good balance between us, because it allows me not to be afraid. To me, one of the biggest tolls of my life being a perfectionist is that I avoided many things because I was so terrified of not doing them well or of not doing them fast enough. And what this process allows me to do is just to be myself, to do my best, and to trust and to let things happen in their own way. And very big things are happening for us in 2022. And I'm very excited and grateful. And I even told Myra, I think it was last week, that in some ways I'm very happy those things are happening now and they didn't happen right away. We needed to go through the process. We needed to go in one direction and change it and ask ourselves questions and do things that didn't work out. And we needed to make those mistakes on the way so that now we're ready for what's coming. So yeah, it's always a struggle, but I think both of us, and again, I'm grateful for Myra for allowing this and showing me the way, in a sense, is that we put motherhood first. It's above everything. And we keep saying this to one another. We know what's important in life, and family is number one, and we do our best plus in our business, but our kids and our families are always first.
I think, yeah, the beginning, we were concerned and we were stressed. This was something new. It was very different. I never ever experienced manufacturing, for example. That's something I'd never done before in my life. And I was so worried. And then I saw Hagit getting worried as well. And I was like, this is not going, this is not going to go well. And then I looked into our philosophy and said, if we are being negative to ourselves, how are we going to transmit a positive message to the rest of the world? That's just counterintuitive. That's not going to work. So I remember, having this conversation with her and saying, if working on this project where we want kids to be happy and embrace themselves and being like a very emotionally healthy grown up, how are we going to transmit this message if we are not spending time with our kids because we're so stressed out about making this project happen? It's just kind of, So I decided just to let go. You know what? Things are going to happen when they're going to happen. It's not worth it to be stressed about it. That's not what we want. At least that's not what I want. And especially in my experiences as a producer, that kind of job is very demanding. You have to be away from your family in all the special occasions, because all the special occasions is when people are watching TV together. So somebody has to be out there creating the content. And that was usually me on holidays, Christmas Day, Thanksgiving, and weekends. I was working away. And when I had to leave that job, it's not that I quit. I had to leave the job and I had to reconnect with myself. It is really not worth it to set everything on the side to pursue a career. This is not for me. And that's just talking about me. If pursuing a career means that I have to put everybody that is valuable for me on the side, then it's not worth it. Because at the end of the day, to me, the biggest legacy is not even this project that I love with all of my heart, this mistake, is the people that I'm going to leave in this earth, which is my kids. And if I can raise two healthy human beings that are going to pay it forward to humanity, that's all I care about. And if on the same time I can do this, then I'm just as happy as can be. So as long as it's not a conflict with what's essential for me, we're going to continue doing it. And so far, we've been very successful doing that. But there's one thing that I keep forgetting to mention. It is that traditionally, being an entrepreneur is putting a lot of pressure on families. So even in other entrepreneurships that I have taken, other startups that I've launched, that's one of the first things that I told my team is families first. You are first. Because if you're happy, you're going to be like, people feel it. Even if they just read the content or look at a product, they feel the way you felt when you make it. So it's a chain. It's not just like, if you're frustrated, things are not going to work and you're not going to be happy doing it. And in the end, it's not going to make sense. So we have to be friendly with motherhood. We have to be friendly with humanity. We have to be true to what's important if we want to do something meaningful.
Wow, that was so powerful. I need to hear it again on a daily, as a daily reminder to myself, because I hear it's a great model to, first of all, put the time boundaries where you dedicate yourself to your family, and then the time that you dedicate yourself to your project or career or whatever, and that those both things fuel each other. You know, that's why I'm hearing from you. It's sort of, that's my recovery time, being with my kids and, you know, living this legacy. So living by my values, which family seems to be one of your most important values in your life. Hagit or Mayra, do you have anything you would like to add?
I just want to tell all the parents out there who are listening, be kind to yourself. You do on any given day, no matter how much you feel like you messed up, you did your best in that very moment. And just be kind to yourself, have compassion, and there is always a new day. And also remember that our children know us really well. And they depend on us, they need us for their survival, so they know us, and it's okay to apologize and say, I'm sorry. It's good modeling behavior to your children and to show them that you're human. And by doing that, you actually allow them to be not perfect and to be okay with that. So just be kind to yourself is really the main message.
Yeah, to me, it will be just to complement what Hagit said is acknowledge and own your mistakes, especially as a grown up, especially in front of your kids, because we want to hide them. As parents, we don't want our kids to find out that we make mistakes. What a shame! How are we gonna continue to raise them if they see us as a failure? Well, it turns out that when they see how you react to your own mistakes, from like dropping something to the ground to like forgetting to pay a bill. And if you sit down to talk to your kid, even if they are like 4 years old, and you can sit there and say, oh, I forgot to pay for the electricity bill. And I did this and I called this, and they see the way you react and they understand that there is a way to fix things, that is not the end of the world, that there is other resources. And then when they are presented with a similar situation in their own lives, even at school, even if they are in kindergarten and their pencil breaks, they will know that there is another pencil that they can use, or they can ask the teacher, or they can solve their own situation. And it doesn't become a mistake. It becomes just a situation in life. And they can grow. And then eventually when they grow up, they are more sensitive and become a better member of society, I think. So just by owning and talking about your mistakes, you can make such a huge difference in your life with all the people around you.
I like when one of you said before that making mistake is just a learning moment. It's a learning opportunity. And I like the idea of giving the uncomfortable feelings, like disappointed, a legit place, and to embrace those feelings, and then to model those coping skills and strategies of how to cope with this uncomfortableness and to have the conversation. So that's really empowering. Yeah, you said it's a cliche, but I am with you. It became a cliche because it means something. It was such an interesting and inspiring discussion. I'm so glad you came and you spent the time with me. You are both such an inspiring people as a career and also on a personal level. And so thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. It was a truly a pleasure.
And have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much for listening. I think the main takeaway from this conversation was, first of all, us. We have to embrace our own mistake, not to think of it as failure, but look at it as an opportunity to learn. And also to be the role model and share it with our kids. And if you haven't listened to the great episode with Neta Shani, who created the Let's Share game, go ahead and listen. So let's wrap it up again. So first of all is us, and be aware of our mistake and embrace them, and to role model that by sharing. And so the next thing is about the kids. So with kids, if a little kids, let's say poor Cap, and he's upset, then we can approach and say, I can tell you are frustrated or upset because the milk just spilled all over. However, do you know that making mistakes means that you are trying to do something new, and that's so exciting to learn something new. So let's try again. So that's what we can do with little kids. With the older kids, though, we can see it as an opportunity for discussion. If we recognize that they are not pleased with the result they got in art project, sport achievement, grade they got, we can approach them and again say, I can tell you are upset. Tell me, what are you upset about? And then after they share something, you can say, so what did you want to achieve? What did you expect to have? How did you expect this art show to look like? And after they sharing this, then we can ask them, so what would you do differently next time to get better, to improve? And so this is basically two things. First of all, look at us and also approach our kids with an opportunity to learn together. And speaking of learning curve, I will be glad to learn what topics you are struggling with and want the podcast to cover. So please contact me on my Instagram or my email. Everything is on the show note, as well as all the links to the content Mistake Club can offer you. So thanks again for being with me, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.